Hello, YouTube. It's Mr. Max here, and as I'm sure you've all heard, back in May during an investors meeting, Nintendo officially announced that at some point between then and next fiscal year, so next March 2025, they would officially reveal the Nintendo Switch successor. Now, they specifically said that there would be a Nintendo Direct in June, and it would not be spoken of at all during that Direct. Well, that Direct did happen in June. Quite a number of good, solid-looking games were announced in that Direct. A lot more than a lot of people were expecting, considering we are in the last real year of the Switch. Um, but that just means that we're now officially in the timetable that potentially any day now Nintendo could announce the Switch successor. Now, will I think they'll announce it anytime soon? Probably not. I imagine they're going to do something very similar to how they did it back with the Switch, release it at earliest October, because currently we know that that new Zelda game is coming out in September. We know that Mario and Luigi and a couple other games are coming out in November. Outside of Mario Party, there's nothing super major already announced for October. So if they were to announce it, late October would be about the earliest they would do it, just like they did with the Switch. However, I personally feel like after this holiday season, they'll probably just do it in January, like they had that giant January presentation for the Switch back in 2017. Because the main reason they announced it in 2016 was just to make the general, the broader audience just make sure that they knew that Nintendo wasn't done. The Wii U was completely failing by that point. This general sentiment for Nintendo had been overly negative for several years at that point, so they just needed to give just a little shot of the arm to investors, to the general population, that Nintendo is still around. Nintendo has something good on the horizon. So they kind of needed to, and they really had nothing to lose considering, they wouldn't really lose any Wii U sales that holiday regardless because it wasn't going to sell anything either way. Whereas this time, since they do have the large amount of sales, large amount of high quality games coming out this holiday season, the potential for them to lose more sales of Switches by announcing Switch 2 is higher. So all that to say, probably January at the, I'm gonna guess January at the earliest is when they will announce it. And once they do announce it, once we actually figure out what the thing is, I just have a couple of ideas for how Nintendo can, if not match, at least replicate a large amount of the success of the Switch. Because currently the Switch is in striking distance of beating the PS2 as being the highest selling piece of hardware as far as a gaming centered is concerned ever. The PS2 is allegedly 160 million units, and the Switch official numbers is somewhere around 142. It's obviously been a little more since that last investor meeting, so probably closer to 143, 144 ish, around there. And they could potentially, do, they could potentially do 4 or 5 million by the end of this year in America alone. If tracking is similar, they're hoping for 13 million by next March, which is probably another reason why they don't want to announce it too early, so they don't want to take away sales from the current Switch. But once the Switch successor is out, and that will be their main system going forward, they're going to want to make sure they hit their ground running and make sure that that system is poised to be as successful as humanly possible. And I just have a couple of suggestions here and just a couple of ideas that I think could really benefit Nintendo and just allow the Switch successor to continue the success of the Switch. And the first major thing that I think Nintendo should do, and I think this is possibly the number one most important thing for Nintendo to do right out of the gate, is just make sure that you have the units at launch for all the people that want it. Now, when the Switch first came out, they announced, I think back in January or February, that they would only be selling about 2 million units in its first month. So March 3rd, when it came out, they only shipped 2 million units worldwide. Now, granted, the Wii U never took off even close. Like it only sold like 13.5 million units worldwide, which is insane considering this fiscal year alone, they're hoping the Switch will sell that much in this 1 year. So keep that in mind. But also the 3DS wasn't really, it did well, but I'm sure per their projections it didn't do nearly as well as they were hoping it would, and especially by 2016 it was tapering off pretty significantly. So like with this being this brand new thing, with it being the successor to the Wii U technically, I'm sure they were fully expecting that 2 million would be about how much, would be a solid amount of units for people who would want them, because they didn't think many people would be the early adopters for a new thing. And even at the time, I was on record saying I thought that was a mistake. Even back in February, I was like, I think this thing has a lot of potential. It'd be the successor to the Wii U and the 3DS, capturing that handheld market as well, which has always been more successful than the consoles. I always said 4 million probably should have been the absolute minimum they should have launched that at. And clearly that it's correct. It was shown correct that they did not have enough at launch, because by the end of May they had to ramp up production quicker and pay to have 700,000 more units airshipped into the States just to try to meet demand, and it still wasn't even close, because I remember my brother's birthday was in June, and we were still scrambling to get more to find one. And we had to like get a weird bundle from GameStop just to get one. We had to like pre-order that. It was like, and then by even that Christmas, they were still really hard to find. I think with the Switch successor, assuming it is everything people are saying it'll be, for essentially, I'm going off the assumption that it is essentially a Switch 2. They'll have the screen. It'll just be a beefier version. There might be a couple of things here and there that make it unique. I don't really have any suggestions for that specifically, but I'll get into more ideas on other stuff later. But as far as just the hardware itself, I'm going off the assumption that it is just purely a Switch 2, more or less. So assuming it is that, I think 6 million is the absolute floor that they need to hit, because the Switch, like I said, it's already at over 140 million units, way more than any human could possibly fathom. Even Nintendo, I'm sure, as we, as shown by them drastically underestimating how many they should have shipped at launch, they had no reason to think that that 140 million units of the Switch would ever be sold, let alone potentially eclipsing the PS2 eventually. So I think 6 million at launch is a solid number to not only meet demand for early adopters, but also just have enough for people to continue to get one throughout the rest of the year. And I'm also assuming around March release, just like they did with the last Switch. If not March, then May, probably at the latest. So, if they have 6 million at launch in May, or in March or May, during that spring era, springtime. And, so that way throughout the rest of the year, they could have like a pretty sizable backlog of people, or for people that haven't bought one yet. They can also still produce more as they go. I think 6 million is a reasonable number. Maybe they might even want to go a little higher. I know they will probably still be, they'll at least be slowing down I'm sure they will still be producing pretty good number of Switches throughout next year or maybe even a couple years beyond just to try to get enough out there to officially pass the PS2. Because I think by 2026, assuming projections are accurate, because if they do match that 13 that they're projecting, that'll be right at 154 million. They'll need 6 million more by end of its lifetime. They could pretty easily do that, especially with price cuts and its other, like form factor changes, other things that they could do to help reduce costs of the Switch while the Switch 2 is out there. But as far as the Switch 2 itself, I think 6 million is a good solid number to start with. And the next thing here, kind of going off of that, just essentially my prediction for the Switch 2 is they won't even really need necessarily, assuming everything goes correctly, assuming it is what we think it is. I think they are poised to perfectly just transition from the Switch into the Switch 2 and just ride that momentum to the next thing. Because two major reasons. One, they are in a uncharacteristic position for any, especially Nintendo, but most consoles by their last year have just completely petered out for as far as like massive games go. For Nintendo specifically, the Wii, it lost almost all of its steam by the time even Skyward Sword came out in November 2011. But especially that last year, 2012, there was no games, zero major releases. I can't even, like, maybe that was the year we finally got localized Xenoblade Chronicles and those other games from Project Rainfall. But those weren't new games. People in other regions had those available before. There was like maybe a couple of like collections or ports or like just weird little side things. As far as major releases, Skyward Sword back in 2011 was the last major Wii game. So that way, by the time the Wii U came out in November 2012, and the only major release for the Wii U was Mario, for New Super Mario Bros. U, and there wasn't really another major first party Nintendo game until Pikmin 3, late the following year. I think it was August of the next year. Like the momentum of the Wii U was halted before it even came out because like the fad of the Wii, it being motion controls, it being a more family centered system, that kind of faded out. Like people just played Wii Sports and like that was really about it. Because even on 100 million unit system that the Wii was, Skyward Sword sold I think 3.6 ish million units, which is really low. I know not everyone loved that game, but you would think, for just how many people had a Wii, even if only probably, I would guess even a third of that, maybe even less, was like core gamers, like core Nintendo fans. Because I will admit, a vast majority of the people that bought a Wii just got it, to have just to play Wii Sports, just to play party games with the family or whatever, and then didn't touch it for months at a time until Christmas or birthday or something. But if even a third of the people who bought a Wii were core Nintendo fans, you would still think, more than 3 million people would buy the new Zelda game, but not really. So yeah, the momentum just was completely halted. So then when the Wii U came out, people didn't really care because they marketed it horribly, and like on top of so many other issues, just the hype for Nintendo as a company wasn't that high. It wasn't nearly as high as they perceived it as because they only saw 100 million people bought a Wii, so they'll clearly buy the next thing, and that didn't work out for them. However, with the Switch, like I said, they're in a completely unique position for Nintendo because every single time there's a new SKU, a new version, even a new like colored bundle, every single time there is some new way to buy a Switch, it just gets eaten up immediately. The Nintendo Switch Lite sold really well at launch. The Switch OLED, it's still in Japan, especially, which is the main place where we get hard numbers, still sells like a fairly new console pretty much every week in its seventh, going on eighth year on the market is crazy. And there's projections that um, once the gold Zelda Switch Lite comes out along with the new Zelda game in September, there's projections that once that comes out, like shortly after that, uh, it would, like, that alone would be enough to bridge the gap between the amount of Switches and the amount of PS2s that were sold in America, and they'll be able to leapfrog it by just releasing that gold Switch Lite, assuming they have enough, produce enough. So, on top of all of that, the fact that they do have a lot of very high quality games, like new game, not just ports, not just collections or whatever. There are a couple here and there. Like, people assumed this year would be very light, considering going in, the only things we really knew about were Princess Peach Showtime, which clearly a lower budget game, not low quality, but lower budget clearly. Uh, Paper Mario Thousand Year Door remake, which is very good, but still a remake. Same with Luigi's Mansion, and now we got that Donkey Kong Country remake or port thing, HD remaster thing. And those are the kinds of games we thought we would get a lot more of at this past Nintendo Direct. But no, we got a brand new Zelda game in its last year, uh, which, unlike Skyward Sword, the momentum is still able to carry that game. I guarantee it's going to sell more than Skyward Sword did. Getting a new Mario and Luigi game, but yes, a presumed dead franchise that people are very excited for. Just Metroid Prime 4 to still look forward to next year, probably next holiday, but I'll get more into that in just a little bit. So we not only know that this year alone they're going to have a lot of very high quality first party releases. We know that there will be at least some new Switch games next year. So once the Switch 2 comes out, assuming it has backwards compatibility, which is my next major point, assuming it has backwards compatibility, people will just see, oh, there's this new Switch thing that is out there. I'm gonna go get that. That's kind of how these every single time there's a new Switch model, I guess the OLED sold incredibly well and still the predominant way people buy Switches now. So with this new version of the Switch, people are gonna go buy that in the same amount of fervor that they bought the Switch OLED and Switches prior. Um, Especially if it has backwards compatibility, they can just essentially market it as having all of these new high quality games, but then also being able to play Mario and Luigi and Metroid Prime and all these other games that are for the Switch can just be played seamlessly on it, which definitely helps. Like, I don't expect there to be any major droughts for the Switch too, because Nintendo has been very good about having at least one new game every month or two throughout the lifetime of the Switch. It's been actually very consistent. Whether it be a brand new game, a port, remaster, remake, something. There's been, I believe, I don't know for certain, but I guarantee, I'm pretty certain that every single year that the Switch has been out, I think there have been like a solid, if not like, AAA, first party Nintendo games, like at least six pretty solid, high quality effort, like high effort games for the Switch from Nintendo, or at least closely working with Nintendo, like a Bayonetta 3, Astral Chain, or something like that. Every single year the Switch has been out. So if they could just ride that momentum, keep that production timetable, you know, keep that timetable for production on games alive throughout the time of the Switch 2, it can just keep selling like the Switch has been selling for 7 going on 8 years now. Because there is no reason for Nintendo to predict given any previous prediction for any previous console, there is no reason that Nintendo in its seventh year should ever predict 13 million units for this system this late in its lifetime, but they are. So if they're predicting that much for the Switch 2, I guarantee, or for the Switch going into the Switch 2, I think I feel like they are primed to absolutely just ride that momentum and continue, you know, pushing out games, pushing the games that are already on the system, maybe even like making updated patches, like how the PS5 and Xbox Series do it, or something like a Tears of the Kingdom can run a little better, which would be fantastic. Doesn't have to be 60 frames, but just make it look a little better, make it run slightly smoother. There could be a Paper Mario Thousand Year Door 60 frames port or patch or something. I definitely don't want them to do like how the Switch did it, where the first year and even now, like a pretty sizable amount of the Switch games were just Wii U games that were ported over. I don't want the Switch 2 to just be a bunch of Switch ports because I assume it will have backwards compatibility. Um, but like if there is like a definitive version of a Tears of the Kingdom that has some kind of DLC or has some major performance patch that it can only happen if there is a port of it or a Switch 2 version of it, then I'd probably buy it again, I will admit. um, but regardless, if there does happen to be some kind of sizable delay between major releases for the first year or two of the Switch 2, they can at least push the idea that these Switch games can be played, can kind of fill those gaps, especially if Metroid Prime 4 comes out after the Switch 2 has already been out for a little while, which I think is pretty likely. I'm imagining Metroid Prime 4 will be the November release date for Nintendo, and they'll like in all the advertising say it is a Switch and Switch 2 game. It'll be a Switch game that can be played on Switch 2 as well. And I'm hoping some kind of performance update, but even if not, it can still be played on either. That will become a little tricky once they officially start transitioning everything they have into Switch 2 games, which is the number one issue I have, or the number one like potential issue Nintendo could run into, like with the Wii U, where people were just confused about what it even was, because the marketing for that system was absolutely terrible. People even nowadays seemingly don't seem to comprehend what the Wii U actually was. I thought it was just like a weird attachment for the Wii, some kind of weird upgrade for the Wii, but not a full on new system. So they just kind of didn't bother buying it or never looked into it because they already had a Wii. But that also does kind of come with the fact that most of the people that bought a Wii were not exactly hardcore gamers, so they didn't really like watch E3 presentations. They weren't really tapped in like a lot of people that bought a Switch are now. So I don't really see that being an issue, but I'm sure that is something that is in the back of Nintendo's head. Like we need to make sure that people understand this is a new thing, and backwards compatibility could potentially hinder that, but I think it is going to be an overall good for them to have backwards compatibility, just so that you know people who buy a Switch can still play other Switch games going forward, because they don't want to just give up on that 150 plus million unit user base, and even people that you know are just somehow just now buying a Switch 2 can still buy Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Mario Odyssey, whatever else they want to buy that are Switch games can still be played on this system. Okay, so next up, I know this might sound a little contradictory based on me like harping on and on about how they can just kind of ride the momentum into the next thing, but also please do not, under any circumstances, uh, rest on your laurels at all. That was the that was one of the major issues they had, going into the Wii U. Like I already kind of said, they specifically didn't seem to try very hard the first year or two of the Wii U. They assumed that a new Mario game would sell the system, even though that new Mario game looked exactly like the last two Mario games, the three looked like the last several Mario games that had come out. Um, like Nintendo Land is fun, but it's not a system seller. Pikmin 3 got delayed to the next August, but even that's not really a system seller. It's a really good game, but it's not really a system seller. Like the first major release for the Wii U was Mario 3D Land the next November, which again isn't even like that big of a deal, especially since it looked a lot like the previous 3D Mario game. So really, the first major Nintendo game that was released for the Wii U was Mario Kart 8 in 2014. That was the first major release. I guess Tropical Freeze what came out a month or two before that, but it was like February 2014. But that's still not like, not a huge system sellers. It's another platformer, which at that point the Wii U had a lot of. That was kind of all the Wii U had. It was like Mario, Rayman, a couple other kind of smaller platform games. The first real big year the Wii U tried to have was in 2014 with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Bayonetta 2, Smash, and like maybe one one other thing. So it just kind of didn't ever get going. So I really need Nintendo to understand that essentially don't be arrogant with it. Don't think that just because this thing has the Switch name that people will buy it. I know I've already kind of laid out the groundwork for why that should work, but they still need to bring it with the games they make. They still need to to continue to make the high quality games that the Switch is known for, and just make those that amount of quality or higher going forward. Make a bunch of different kinds of games. Um, like don't just make a bunch of Mario, make a bunch of Zelda, make a bunch of just seemingly low effort stuff, and just kind of devalue what the Switch is and will be. Continue the just you know every couple of months have a direct and announce at least a couple of very high quality games for the near future, like they have been. And I think if they continue the track they have with the Switch, I think they could very easily do that, especially if production times for Switch 2 games aren't that much longer than the Switch. Because I know Miyamoto or somebody at Nintendo recently said that like they have this system where they specifically, they make a lot of, I don't think they use these terms. They make a lot of double A games where they can make them very quickly but still keep the quality very high up. But then it'll take a year or two to make, while in the background making something like a Tears of the Kingdom or Animal Crossing or Mario or like big Mario Odyssey, um, that can sell 20, 30 million units. And if they can make a couple, one or two 20 to 30 million unit sellers every couple of years, then they're good to go. Those games can subsidize the smaller, still high quality games that they just want to make. Because I guarantee, as good as I'm sure Metroid Prime 4 is going to be, that's not going to be a 20 million seller. It can maybe hit 10 if we're lucky. Metroid Dread was a fantastic game. It released alongside the Switch OLED, but it still didn't cross barely 3 million. It's like 3.1 ish at this point. Maybe 3.3. It's like it's between 3 and 4, but it's not nearly the high that new Metroid game, as good as that is on the Switch, should be. But regardless, because Tears of the Kingdom came out the gate with 20 plus million units, this new Mario Party that's coming out in October, that's going to sell another 10, possibly 20 million units by the end of its lifetime. Because there are these games that are pretty, that come out and can sell 20, 30 million units. Like, because those games can come out, they can subsidize these, smaller, these smaller budget games that take less time to make, but can still, be quality, like that new Zelda game. I think it's going to be very, very good, but it's using the same engine that the Link's Awakening remake had, a lot of the same assets and stuff. So clearly, it didn't take as long to make, but I still think it's going to be a very good game. And even if it doesn't sell Tears of the Kingdom's numbers, it's still, I think they could still easily see that as a success. So, if if the Switch, if during the Switch 2's life, every couple of months, they can still have a pretty good amount of high quality games, even if they don't feel like they're the biggest games ever. I think that's a very good strategy the Switch has had, and they should very much so continue that into Switch 2. And I kind of touched on this before, but just please, please keep keep the level of marketing that you've done for the Switch. Keep that energy for the Switch 2. You know, uh, pretty consistent, solid, TV, internet commercials. Just very generally very good, directs. Um, partnering with many with various different people and like the Game Awards, and it's a bunch of different places that the Switch that Switch marketing has been that just has allowed it to continue to stay in the general audience's mind, that like this saying is allowed. If you somehow don't have one yet, here's all these great games that are coming with it. If you already have one, but have a family that you want to play with or need an upgrade, here's a Switch OLED. Or you have a younger brother, here's the Switch Lite, just for example. So yeah, just keep a very similar energy with the Switch 2. And I think if they can do that along with all the other things that I've mentioned before, I don't think they even really need to market it that hard outside of the first year or so, just making sure the new adopters realize, or even just general people realize, that it exists and is a brand new thing. So, yeah. And lastly, I think even though the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 and even other like Nintendo Switch clone systems like the Steam Deck or the Asus ROG Ally, or there's a couple others. Even though these systems are $400, $500, $600 somehow, I don't know how the Steam Deck is that much, but it is somehow. I think it would be an absolute mistake for Nintendo to go anywhere north of 400. I think 350 is a sweet spot, assuming that the tech can allow it to be that cheap. But 400 is the absolute max that they can charge for this thing. And ideally, it would come in at 350, and they would knock the Switch OLED at least down 50, hopefully down to 250, knock the Switch down to 200, knock the Switch Lite down to 150. So that way, people that still want the cheaper option to play the games that will still be coming out, play the games that have already come out, they can just buy the regular Switch. But 350 to 400 will not be a super intimidating amount for new adopters, especially since, like I said, the Switch OLED is 350 and still selling very well, even though it still has the bones of a 7-year-old system. We're really the bones of a 9-year-old system, going off just the fact that the technology is from 2015. So, yeah. So yeah, I'm sure the temptation from somebody could be there to make it 500 if the technology is at least as good, if not better, than the Steam Deck or the Asus ROG Ally or whatever, all those different uh, handheld competitors out there. But 400 is the absolute max they should go. And if it is, if they can make it, again, hopefully 350, but if they can make it 400 or less, and they can knock the Switch, the regular Switches down quite a bit, I think their pose should just make absolute gangbusters next year. Like I really do not see, unless something absolutely horrifying happens, I do not see this failing in the slightest. Like obviously I'll eat my words, I'll be very sad, but like if this goes wrong, but I think they're poised to just do extremely well going into the next generation. And I really hope they do. I'm really not even asking for a lot. Like I said in this video, I'm not really even like I don't really need more than just a more powerful Switch, as long as the screen is as big as it was on the Switch OLED. Hopefully, it's a 1080p screen. Um, like I don't even need it to produce 4K image or whatever. I don't need all the bells and whistles of an Xbox Series or PlayStation 5. I just need it to be, a good, powerful system that I can carry all the information from my Switch over to it. Um, like all the save data over that can. I know there's some things like Animal Crossing and Pokemon for some reason can't transfer for some reason, but the vast majority of the stuff can transfer over. That'd be cool. If I could use like the Switch Pro controller on the next Switch, that would also be great. My Switch Pro controller is probably at least 5 years old at this point, but it's still working very well. Like if I could just use that at least, until I'm able to get a new controller, assuming there is a brand new controller for it. Um, yeah, I'm not asking for a lot. I'm just asking for a new Switch to make my Nintendo games look and play just a little better going forward, especially Pokemon, because clearly Game Freak needs some needs some new hardware to make their games look. Hopefully it'll make them look better, but you never know. Um, Anyway, let me know down below. What do you think about all my suggestions? Do you think I missed anything major? Do you have any major concerns with what Nintendo is going to be doing going forward? Um, do you even, think it's a mistake for them to be announcing the next Switch before they've officially passed the PS2? Because I genuinely think that if they waited too much longer, then the momentum would start dying out. So they couldn't just ride that hype into the next system. But some people might say, no, they need to secure that top spot before releasing it, just so they can, so there's no wiggle room for error. Because once the Switch 2 comes out, it could completely dwarf any sales of the original Switch, which is possible. But I'm sure everything Nintendo is doing is very calculated. I guarantee that when it comes out next spring ish, hopefully, that the games are there, the price is right for what it is, and it's gonna be a fun time. So yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. Let's have a discussion going, and I will see you all later. Take care.